Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight's program, Dave Murphy. He's a retired teacher, a freelance writer, a poetry workshop leader, and also one of the trustees of the Historical Society. Dave has taught at Lenape High School, Atlantic Cape Community College, Temple University, and he holds a master's degree in the psychology of reading. He's presented on a wide range of cultural and historical topics, including a series of talks on the operas of Richard Wagner, which were hosted by the Life Mission Fellowship, who spoke at our last panel discussion. And these are also available on YouTube. That's my commercial for Dave. We're getting affiliate credits for that. In addition to his work in education, Dave is deeply involved in the community. He volunteers with the Kiwanis Club, the Committee on Homelessness in the town, and the Walt Whitman Association. And if that wasn't impressive enough, he's also a black belt in Shotokan Karate. Is that correct pronunciation?
Arigato gozaimasu.
So I hope we don't need that tonight. I hope he's just warning us to all stay in line tonight. But with that, I'd like to introduce Dave Murphy.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Eileen. That was a very kind introduction. I don't know who it was you were introducing, but thank you. What you just heard after Eileen's introduction was the church bell from the Methodist church in town. It's the only real church bell that is still working. And sometime in late April, I wanted to get a recording for tonight, and other meetings like this we'll be having, other presentations. So it rings each Sunday morning at 9:27. I went over to the 7-Eleven store across the street from the Methodist church, leaned on the back of my car and just turned on my cell phone to record it, and Deb made it sound magical here. Thank you again. Well, I want to thank you, Eileen, for the introduction, and I also want to thank some of the good folks of Hammonton who helped put this evening together, from the press releases to the evening itself. Thanks especially to everyone that is very well maintained and staffed. Deb, once again, thank you for your support, your guidance, your patience, your sympathy. Eileen, thank you too for putting up with my importunate texts and your faith in me for working with the people to put this all together. And thanks for your eloquent efforts in publicizing this event. We'll be doing more like this in the fall with some other houses of worship. We can only do 3 or 4 at a time. Otherwise, the audience, you might just drift away. By the way, behind me are the men's and ladies' rooms. But there's also the door to leave. I want you to come back. There's a bell on the door if you're leaving, I also want to thank others, especially my wife, Joanne, for putting up with me getting this together and texting all the time. You're never talking to me. I'm sorry. I am sorry. I want to thank the varied clergy whom I've interviewed even several years ago for a series of articles I wrote for the Hammonton Gazette entitled Hammonton Houses of Worship. And I also want to thank everybody involved in the Historical Society of Hammonton, who have really encouraged us to put this together. Everyone has been available, helpful, and positive, and I thank them for that. And thank all of you for being present here tonight. I also want to encourage you to visit the Historical Society Museum. It's right at Veterans Park, kind of a gray building, little building. Isn't it gray?
Yes.
It's more beige. Thanks. My editor. It's green?
It's gray.
Oh, good. A debate. I know. We had enough of them. We're done. Anyway, it's a wonderful museum, and you can go almost any Saturday, 11 to 2. Someone will be there. But go to our wonderful, truly wonderful website, and you can make an appointment where some of us will come and meet you to take you through if you can't go on a Saturday from 11 to 2. But there's quite a lot to see there, including a wonderful display of various artifacts from the Hammonton Houses of Worship. It's worth seeing. It's a temporary display. We change it from time to time, but I think you'd like that. We are an historical society. So we were not preaching any doctrine other than history and acknowledging through these presentations one of our nation's four freedoms, the freedom of worship, as outlined by Franklin Delano Roosevelt and as expressed by the people here in Hammonton. The freedom of worship has taken many forms in our town, even going back about 40,000 years. The Lenape Native Americans, Indians who lived here, had their own religion. They worshiped one main god and 11 lesser gods. In the 1830s, when President Andrew Jackson signed his Indian Removal Act, 1830 maybe, some of the Native Americans of Hammonton were panicked, and some went down to a Methodist church in Bridgeton. They were the Nanticoke, I may say this wrong, forgive me, the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Indians, who were hidden by members of the Methodist church called St. John's Methodist in Bridgeton for their own protection, so they didn't have to go west with other Lenni Lenape Indians. Some of their descendants still attend that church. The freedom to worship has taken many forms in our town ever since. In Hammonton, the Saints Peter and Paul Traditional Latin Mass Catholic Church, currently in operation, was once the Episcopal Church. Before that, it was a Unitarian church. We hope to hear about their histories sometime soon. Cemeteries in town comfort people of various faiths, including Muslims from our area that are buried in and around town, some at the Oak Grove Cemetery. This is one of several Muslim graves in Oak Grove Cemetery. And I thought I would put this one up this evening because you can see one of the names, or this man's name, notes that he was a veteran from the Korean War. Veterans Day is next week. I thought we should acknowledge that, since Veterans Day is approaching. Well, thank you, Deb. You have to excuse me. I was running 4 miles just before I walked in. Tonight, we're going to hear about 3 houses of worship in town. And let me begin with a church bell. You ready?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I was number 2, yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, that's right. Nick, you're number 1. Sorry. I am new to this. I'd like to introduce Nick Fognano Jr., a lifelong Hammonton resident, and whose parish priest sits back here, Father David Rivera. Nice to see you. Good, thank you. And when you behave yourself, you can come up with the others. Thank you, Father. Nick Fognano, is a lifelong Hammonton resident, a St. Joe graduate, class of 1972, has a BA in history, attended Albright College. He is a Juris Doctorate, Delaware Law School, Widener University, has practiced law in this area, and for 26 years you were the Atlantic County Assistant Prosecutor. Yes. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And in 2006, he published a short history of the St. John the Baptist Society, and in 2021 published Faith and Tradition, the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Hammonton, New Jersey. And he has been sacristan of the at St. Mary Mount Carmel Parish for the last 8 years. Nick, you're on.
Good evening.
Hard time seeing where I am here. Oh, sorry. On slideshow.
It's number 1.
There we go. And then from beginning. Is the arrow over that? There we go. Okay. Do you want to run your own slides, or do you want me to pick them for you?
I guess I could click them.
You can, just that little arrow clicks it,
This one here, center.
the one to the right.
Right, okay. So I have 140 years of history of St. Joseph's Church to talk about in 15 minutes, but I'm going to get started. The forerunner of Catholic faith in that connects to Hammonton was in 1827 when the Church of Our Lady of Assumption in Sweetwater was built. And that was built for mainly Irish Catholics who were working the bog iron industry. And it was a forerunner of St. Joseph's Church, and when the iron industry kind of dried up, people were directed to St. Nicholas in Egg Harbor City, and that was where St. Joseph first became a mission church too.
The right arrow.
So that's St. Mary's in the Pines, and it was after it was closed. Catholics in the Hammonton area were directed to St. Nick's of Egg Harbor. In the first Catholic church established in Hammonton was in 1886. It's the first St. Joseph's Church. The property on which it sat was donated by Judge Richard J. Burns, and the cost was $3,000 to build it. The pews and a painting of the crucifixion that were installed in that church came from St. Mary in the Pines. With the opening of the church, this church was still a mission church to St. Nicholas of Egg Harbor. When the church opened, the priest asked the members who started the Mount Carmel festival to bring that festival down to the church area from Pine Road. And that in 1886, 1887 was the first year that the Mount Carmel feast as we know it today was down in that area with the procession and the Italian festival. And there's the interior. You see the majestic statue of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. In 1891, a committee was formed at St. Joseph's Parish to import a statue of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and it arrived in 1891, and it was in 1891 or 1892 that it was first taken into procession, which continued on and was taken again, as you can see, in 2025 for the 150th anniversary of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. In 1901, the Bishop of Trenton, which now controlled all of South Jersey's Catholics, appointed the Pious Society of Missions, later known as the Society of Catholic Apostolates. We all know them as the Palatine priests, to come to St. Joseph's Church to administer to the faithful there. This would be the start of an 103-year service of the Palatines to St. Joseph's Church. By 1912, Father Gaspar Dali, a pastor of St. Joseph's Church, and the trustees are already making plans to build a new, bigger church due to the influx of Italian immigrants. So in 1919, this Romanesque-style church was built. And the 1886 church was left standing as the chapel of St. Vincent Pallotti. This is the interior, and more statues were purchased. Many of them the saints, favorite saints of the towns and villages in Italy and Sicily from where the Italian immigrants had come from. 1922 saw the beginning of parochial school system in Hammonton, and the first elementary school was built in 1922. It was comprised of additional classrooms, and an auditorium on the second floor. And if you were to go to St. Joseph's School today, if you went into the back of the school, you would see the old section. And at the same year, the religious teachers Filippini were brought to teach to the students and moved into the convent. In 1935, the St. Joseph High School started, and it was basically started as a seminary for Palatine priests. So the first year they started with a 9th grade, and the second year a 10th grade, and continued on. And the first graduating class it included 4 future priests who were stationed at St. Joseph's Church. It was Father Joseph Mangari, Father Raymond Fume, Father Michael Parenti, and Father Guido Karsich. During these years, the Mount Carmel procession continued on, and I'm going to show a few pictures of the Mount Carmel procession from the 30s through the 60s. In the early days, they were carrying the statues on their shoulder. And this is from the 1930s going down North 8 Harbor Road. Father Guido Staccati, who's a pastor, marching in front of them. This is coming down, I believe, Fairview Avenue, 1940s. 50th anniversary advertisement. 1938, see the size of the crowd following the Blessed Mother. Again, 1940s. In the early 1960s, and that's Father Angelo Casso. And the member, Mount Carmel member to the extreme right is Carmen Pantalone, the father of Luke Pantalone. Reverend Mark Martorelli was pastor in the 40s and the early 50s, and he initiated, increased the size of the St. Joseph Church, St. Joseph School, adding the gymnasium, a chemistry laboratory, and a kindergarten. Other former pastors of St. Joseph's Church included Father Gaspar Dahlia, who I spoke of, who supervised the building of the 1919 church. Father Nicholas Rinaldi, who purchased land for the Holy Sepulchre Cemetery. And again, Father Joseph Mangari, pastor for over 20 years. In 1962, Bishop Celestine J. Damiano, Bishop of Camden, announced that a new parish was opening in Hammonton, which would become St. Martin de Porres. And St. Martin's had a mission church that would soon become known as St. Anthony of Padua. The same year that was announced, Father Pasquale Scamizzi, pastor of St. Joseph's, announced that a new St. Joseph's Church would be built, and that the 1886 and 1919 churches would be demolished. And that was I remember as school kids, we went out to see them remove the bell from the bell tower. And that bell presently today can be seen at the corner of 3rd Street and French Street on the corner of the church. And while the church after the church was demolished, and during the construction of the 1960, the new church, temporary facilities were set up in an old garment factory, later known as the Bingo Hall. And I remember during this time in 1964 in November, when we were in school, when they announced that President Kennedy had been shot, and we all were sent over to the temporary school to say a prayer before they dismissed us until after his funeral. And then we later went back to they were giving out votive candles, which you had to put in your window to in honor of the president. In 1964, the new church was dedicated in May. And there were, inside St. Joseph's Church, there are 10 altars which have statues on them. Each of the altars, which is marble, inside of each altar are pieces of either the 1886 or 1990 church that were basically kind of like a time capsule, different parts of the buildings that were demolished. 1964, St. Martin de Porres Church opened. And just for the information, everybody who lived north of Bellevue Avenue was in St. Joseph's Church. Everybody south of Bellevue Avenue was in St. Martin's, and everybody on the other side of Route 206 was St. Anthony of Padua. And it wasn't until 1968 that St. Anthony of Padua was finally opened and dedicated by the bishop. In 1975 saw the centennial celebration of the Mount Carmel feast. And here you see Father Joseph Mangari on the right, and the other priest is Father Michael Parente. As I said, both of whom graduated the seminary at the same year. And you might identify some of the other Hammontonians in that picture. And this is from the Philadelphia Inquirer. In 2004, Father Robert Nolan, pastor of St. Joseph's Church, announced that due to the shortage of priests, the Palatine Order would be leaving St. Joseph's Parish after 103 years of service. Beginning of 2005, brought the priests of the Camden Diocese addressed to serve Hammonton's Catholics, and the first pastor was Monsignor Dominic Botino. In 2010, Bishop Joseph Galanti announced that the three parishes at Hammonton would now be consolidated back into one parish. St. Martin de Porres Church would be sold and later became known as, today it's the Cathedral Entertainment Center on South Egg Harbor Road and Park Avenue. And St. Joseph was designated as the primary place of worship, and St. Anthony's was the secondary place of worship. The first pastor of the new parish was homegrown Hammontonian Father Tom Donio, who was instrumental in naming the new church St. Mary Mount Carmel. "2020 saw the church dealing with the COVID-19 epidemic, and there was a period of time that the church was closed due to the ruling of the Camden Diocese, but it was opened in time for the July 16th procession with social distancing in church, and as you can see, with face masks, and the procession went on as usual in 2020. And this is current 2025, our pastor, Father David Rivera, started as parochial vicar in 2018, has now been pastor since 2020. He's here tonight. And in 2025, the Mount Carmel feast continued on into his 150th year, with the additional honor of a canonical coronation approved by the Vatican and Pope Francis weeks before his death. And the statue again was taken out into procession as it has been for many years since 1891. I want to also advise some artifacts I've brought into the hall tonight for you to take a look at. I have a brick from the 1919 St. Joseph's Church, which we had gone down to when they had demolished it, and there was a lot of rubble. We grabbed the brick, and I later found out during the Mount Carmel feast that a bunch of kids had gone down and got a lot of bricks, and they were selling them at the feast. And set up on the stand and were selling them.
Entrepreneurs.
I also have brought some parish bulletins from the 1940s. Today's bulletins are weekly. Back then in the 40s, these were bi-monthly, and they're like little magazines, and they have all the information about the baptisms, weddings, funerals, what the societies are doing, and what's going on at the school. So a big change from what we have today. I also brought a pin from the Holy Name Society. My grandfather was a member, and the Holy Name Society, there was basically one in every Catholic church, and it was the men's go-to society. And they basically ran the food stand during the Mount Carmel feast. They served as ushers at Mass, and they also had a yearly father-son breakfast, communion breakfast. And I brought a program from 1963. The guest speaker was Chuck Bednarik of the Philadelphia Eagles, and I was able to get his autograph, and I brought that with me tonight too. And then I have the plate from 1956 that they were selling with the 1919 church on it and Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And finally, I brought something that's not normally seen, is a charcoal rubbing done by John Toothman, a teacher over at Hammonton Schools, and it's from a plaque, a marble plaque that sits in the back of the church and has all the names of the 1919 church donors.
Where are all these artifacts we might look at?
And I have them over at the table there. And it's an interesting look at the names, because some of the names haven't yet been anglicized yet. So you might take a look and see some of the names of your own family members in there. And so I know my time must be getting short. So I want to conclude by thanking Dave and the Historical Society for having me, and for you to come out tonight and listen to this wonderful 140-year history. And thanks again for having me.
Nicholas, thank you very much. That was really fascinating. And thank you for bringing all these artifacts. When we're all done with the three speakers, about 11:30, feel free to have some refreshments in the back. And we'll have a period of questioning too, if you like, or observations. And there are artifacts over here that I hope you'll look at. And Pastor DeNick from the Baptist Church, whom I'm going to introduce shortly, he has some items too. We'll move over there, although some are already there. I also want to acknowledge that Pastor Rachel Sutphin from the Presbyterian Church is with us tonight too. Thank you, Rachel. Josh, I'll let you do the other introduction. Okay. My good friend, Rabbi Abby from Temple Beth is here tonight too. I'm really pleased to see you. Pastor DeNick was born on March 2nd, some time ago. In the great Southwest, he writes, that is Southwest Philadelphia. And At a young age, he was already attending church and Sunday school regularly, including achieving perfect attendance at Sunday school for a number of years, and had these little attendance bars. I was raised a Methodist. I had one. My friend Charlie had 9. We were enemies in the church. Anyway, as a teenager, he feels that he accepted Jesus as his Savior and started at the Philadelphia College of Bible. At that time at 18th and Arch Street. It's moved on since then. And in 1966, he married Shirley, who I'm happy to say has joined us here too. And he began attending the Faith Theological Seminary in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. If I remember right, that's still there.
No, it's moved to Baltimore
Oh,
a couple of years ago.
just a couple of years ago, but maybe 30 years ago, it might still have been there.
Yeah.
All right, I used to walk past it. He also, while attending the seminary, was a full-time employee with the Recreation Department of the city of Philadelphia and worked at playgrounds all over the city and came out. He was able to come back to, the real world. Anyway, his biggest, one of his first ministries was in, let me try that again. His first full ministry was up in the Adirondacks at the First Baptist Church of Fort Edward. How many of you have been there? Anyway, it was quite a shock from him going from the city of Philadelphia to the Adirondack Mountains, where one night the temperature dipped to 35 degrees below zero, he writes. Eventually, he was ordained in October of 1972, worked briefly in Lancaster, PA, and he and his wife wanted to develop a ministry with students at Millersville State College, and were about to start a ministry, for handicapped students, but it didn't quite happen, and they went through a little bit of a period of transition, and looking for another place where God might lead him to become a minister, but he didn't want to go to New Jersey. To him, New Jersey was a flat, sandy, humid place that was nothing except a way to go to the shore. And so God works in mysterious ways, we might say. In 1981, he came to Hammonton and hasn't left. So I'd like us to welcome Pastor DeNick from the Hammonton Baptist Church. Before we do, we had the picture of the outside. I missed it.
Yep, okay.
And here's a, you know that church near the post office and town hall. Here's a video. Many of you may have not seen the interior. Here's a shot, a video, 23 seconds of the interior of the beautiful Baptist church. It's stunning.
And New Jersey is still flat and hot and dry. Let's see. Hammonton Baptist Church was organized in 1859. No, I was not there. It was organized at Elvin's Firehouse General Store. That was where around the Wawa is today, right around there. That's where they organized it. It was never incorporated. A lot of churches are incorporated, and there are some pluses and negatives to that. We're not incorporated, but we still are legal under the state. 1862, the second year of the American Civil War, they began building the church. And in 1864, it was completed. There's some pictures that are on paper that are over on the table. And basically, it was a square box. It looked completely different than it does today. It was a square box, and it was down, if you look where the Methodist Church is, about 3 or 4 houses down on Bellevue Avenue is where the church was. It was built completely looks completely different than it does today. It had a bell tower, which was artificial, didn't have any real purpose. There was no bell. Probably one of the most monumental events that ever happened in the town of Hammonton is that they moved that church from where it was to where it is. Now, just think about that. Back in 1885, they had no pneumatics, no hydraulics, no real electric. How did they jack it up, roll it over to where it is today? We've looked for information about that, can't find anything about it. It was a monumental event. It would be more monumental today because you have all sorts of wires and things like that. But it was a major event to bring it over to where it is now. So that was in 1885. And then about 1904-07, they decided that they needed to renovate and expand the church. So they got together and they had a meeting, and on the table over there is the photocopy of the minutes of the meeting where they decided to build the church. They purchased 2 lots, and that's where they put that church. And so they decided now they're going to renovate it. And so the cost for the renovation, they took and they put the back part of it, the whole big back section, okay? They put the current steeple and bell tower, and they changed the entire interior of the church, made it more like an amphitheater sort of event with a chancel. I'm a Baptist, but I still know the terms. The chancel. The Baptists like to call it a stage, which just gets me to, it's not a stage. You hear that? It's not a stage, John. It's not a stage. And the pews, they weren't padded. They changed the windows with the stained glass, and the total cost in about 07 was $5,000. Now, for $5,000 today, you could probably buy a pew. That's what you could do. So they made those renovations, and that worked out well. In the back part of it was just one large room. Today, that's offices, and at one point, I'm not sure that was the time, I don't think it was, but at one point, they put running water and lavatories in the back. I'm glad they did. And so that was the upstairs, and that was the back. Now, the bell tower never was meant to have a bell. It was never meant to have a bell. If you look into the bell tower, you can see that it doesn't have any of the supports. I say that because we had a member, an elderly member, who was at our church, who said he remembers coming to the church, and as he came up the steps at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings, he would hear the bell ring. I'm not sure what bell he was listening to.
St. Joe, maybe.
That was maybe St. Joe.
The Methodist church.
It might have been the Methodist, but it wasn't the Baptist. We had no bell. But what they did with the bell tower, sort of interesting. The summer's hot and whatever. So in the sanctuary, in the ceiling, they made a big cutout, and they installed a huge exhaust fan with louvers on it. And then at the bell tower, at the end of the attic, there's a big doorway, and they would make sure that doorway was open. And on the floor of the bell tower, up at the top, they put louvers. So they would turn that fan on, open the windows, and that caused enough draft to come up through, out the bell tower and out the louvers. So they had an exhaust fan. And we used that for a long, long time. When we first came, I remember that the motor burned out, and another fellow and I went up there to to change the motor. That was when I was young and did foolish things. But there's another picture back that I really think is kind of interesting. It has two pictures on it. It's on the back table. What does the interior look like? Well, in these old buildings, how did you heat them? And you can see how they heated them. As you went into the building, there was 2 aisles, and in the corner, over in here, there was a large wood-burning stove. A large wood. The pipes went up, one went across this way, and one went back this way. And they would get that thing stoked up till it was red hot, and that put enough heat to at least take the chill off of the room. Now, having lived up in the Adirondacks, that's a common thing. People will take that and they'll have a big wood-burning stove in their basement, and they'll have the stovepipe run the length of the house. And we had a friend, we would go over there and tell him, please turn the heat down. He said, I can't because it's burning in the stove and I can't turn it down. It would get that hot. I mean, that's how it would. So anyway, that's what it looked like. And you also see the layout at that time. And we still do have the 3 chairs, the large armchair, the 2 smaller chairs, and we do have the pulpit. The chairs are used upstairs in the sanctuary. We have the pulpit downstairs. Probably 25 years ago or so, we did have some major work done in the church where, I don't know how many of you remember Harry Koblenz. Anybody remember Harry Koblenz? Yeah. I got to know Harry a little bit. My son worked for Harry. Harry needed somebody to help him, and I told my son, you're working for Harry for a while. And he became so good at it that Harry had him doing a lot of his work, and Jeff just does it part-time. Anyway, Harry came and did all of our pews, the fancy ends of them. He really redid all the chairs, stripped them down, redid them, and he charged us the grand price of $2,300. I mean, that was a gift. And so everything was refinished. After that, sometimes we had everything padded, had the red cushioned seats put on. When we first came to the church, this was really kind of strange. The lighting was these large spun aluminum saucers. That's what they were. They were like a large saucer. It was a spun aluminum. They were on poles from the ceiling about 4 foot long. The purpose was to have a big bulb. They had these big 300-watt mogul base bulbs, and it was supposed to reflect off the ceiling to give you light in the church. Didn't work. During the day, it might not have been too bad, but at night, you couldn't see anything. I mean, it was terrible. So we had them change and put the hanging lights in. Still wasn't quite right. And then we put inset lights, so now we have the inset, and it shows quite nice. And then we put air conditioning in a couple of years after that. The interior of the church was changed. It was put so that you could, it's like a little amphitheater. The sound, the acoustics are really excellent in there. So then in the 1950s, they decided that they wanted to put a basement in. We needed room, and they wanted to put Sunday school rooms in. So they brought in an architect, and they brought in some people to make some decisions, and they dug around every place. And they were told, you can't do that. You can't dig it up because of the sandstone. It would not hold the weight of the church. Well, the way the story goes that I heard was, we had some farmers in the church, and they said, what do you mean we can't do it? How many farmers, you tell them you can't do something? So they came in the side one day in the parking lot with a front end loader of some sort. They started digging, and they dug away and shored up and dug away and shored up. And we have a full basement. We've had that full basement since 1955. Nothing has cracked, fallen, or whatever. It is still there. That's our basement, and it's done very well. And now we've moved restrooms and things down there. So it's a finished full basement downstairs. We had youth meetings and prayer meetings and things like that down in the basement. upstairs our regular service meetings. We haven't done much as far as the building is concerned up to this point. The building's in fairly good shape. It's old. What you want to remember is it's still the old building. If you would take the siding off of that building, you would still see lumber that dates back from 1862. If you want to see some beautiful lumber, you go up into the attic. We have these big, beautiful timbers up in the attic that you could probably take the church apart and sell them for a fortune. They are beautiful timbers. And so just think about that again. How did they move all of that? That's just an amazing, amazing situation. So the church has been there from 1862, went through all the different renovations, and it has weathered all of the storms. We had to change the bell tower because water was coming in and things such as that. We do have pictures back there that I showed you. I do want to, we have a list of the pastors. The first pastor was James Trickett. I'm not sure that's a good name for a pastor. My middle name is Ernest. I thought that was a good one. I was looking up back in when they did the renovations in the basement. There was an article in the newspaper, and I have some of it somewhere here, where the original documents were found explaining what they were going to do. And we have copies of those. Our problem is we have copies of a lot of things, but I don't know where the originals are. And I'm the one who made the copies. That was a long time ago, but I'm still looking. But I did want to share something with you. It's a little bit of extra here. When you go to Bagliani's or to ShopRite's this week, in 1955, T-bone and sirloin steak was 79 cents a pound. Center cut pork chops, 67 cents a pound. 3 cans of tomato soup, 29 cents. Frozen cod fillet, 16 ounce, 29 cents. I mean, this will make you sick. It'll make you sick. Nostalgic to see how things are. So we've been there. We came in 1981. When we came, they had a school, Sunrise Christian Academy. We kept it till 1986. It just became too much, and we lost students, so that that next year was going to be just we couldn't bear it. And having the school in the church is a lot of wear and tear and finances. So we stopped the school program, and we don't have that anymore. We came in 1981, and so we've been there 44 years. And that's a long time for not wanting to be somewhere. I guess you never say no to God, you know. And I can't. He's up there chuckling somewhere, but you know, I just. We did move to town, and my grandfather came over from Italy. He was a cabinet maker, and he worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad, and he did repair work and alterations on Pullman cars up at the Parkside place. When he came over, he had a real Italian name, but I guess it wasn't too good. So his name was DeNicola, and so he changed it to DeNick. Well, now half of South Philly is DeNick's. There's a DeNick's hot roast beef sandwich, which they never give us anything. But anyway, so we brought our kids down, and they came to school here. And one day, our kids, my son John came up to me and said, "Dad, I want to change my name like everybody else. I want to go back to the way it was. I want to go back to DeNicola." I said, "You can do anything you want, but we're staying the way it is now." No. before we were here, we were in Lancaster. We pastored a church in Lancaster for 4 or 5 years. And that was interesting because up there we had all of the German names, Pennsylvania Dutch, Stoltfoots and all things like that. And that was tough to get into. And then we came back down here and we have Chapin and Carpaccio, and it was a whole new thing to get it. But I guess we've adjusted to it. So we've been here 44 years. We thank the Lord for the opportunity of being here. We have no idea. Our church has gotten smaller. We still are self-sufficient. We have a missions program and do other things for outreach. And God has blessed, even though we're a small church. And we thank God for the opportunity of being here and sharing His Word. You make discoveries. When you root around your house, you make discoveries. So one day, about 25 years ago, they were doing some work up in the attic. And one of the men came down and said, "Pastor, we found a few artifacts up in the attic." I said, "Oh, really? What'd you find?" He said, we found this corncob pipe. It looks like it's been used. And there was a small empty whiskey flask. And they were together, stuck behind some insulation. So we're still looking for whoever left it there. If you're missing your corncob pipe, it's well broken in, we'd be glad to return it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pastor DeNick, thank you very, very much. I was thinking as I was listening to the pastor that he could read a menu and it would sound beautiful. It's a great voice. Or I was going to say a phone book, but I don't think everybody remembers what phone books were. If you read the phone book, it would sound great. If you want to hear more of Pastor DeNick, there are some of his messages on YouTube from a couple, 3 or 4 years ago. There's a whole series of sermons from Pastor DeNick on YouTube I happened to find. Well, you're still here. By the way, I should also mention that the Bertino twins are here. Bravo. Thank you for coming. I feel like Ed Sullivan. In our audience tonight, does anybody remember Ed Sullivan? That's right, we're a historical society. Well, let's go back about 6,000 years. I may have this wrong, but as I remember, we are in the land of Ur. You are? I'm from Philadelphia. Oh, I made a mistake, and all these clergy people are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm in trouble. How do I say it? As into is human. Okay. When we believe most of the Jewish religion kind of started, even though it may go back to 10,000 years or 12,000 years, but at least 6,000 years. And in the great diaspora, they wound up here in Hammonton for many years. And I would just like to say that I'm really honored to introduce a man named Josh Cutler, who stands right there. He's a PhD student in Holocaust Studies at Gratz College. I thought you were at Stockton University.
I finished. I got my master's.
What a difference a day makes. What a difference a day makes. But anyway, Josh, you have your master's from Gratz.
No, sorry. Master's from Stockton.
Why don't you get up?
I'll go there. And I'm halfway through my PhD at Gratz College.
Oh, bravo. Okay.
Holocaust Studies, yeah.
I got it. Okay. And he's serving now as the executive director of the Board of Jewish Education of Atlantic and Cape May counties. He has just published his first book, The 70 Shuls, Synagogue Life and Yiddishkeit from the Pine Barrens to the Boardwalk. Real short title, but sounds exciting. Really, it does. Fascinating. And in his spare time, he leads group tours to lesser-known Jewish communities around the world, from Africa to Asia, through his company called JBC Tours. And now here's a plug, the next JBC adventure will be Croatia in 2026. And I think we're in for a real treat. And I'm delighted to say once more, well, Josh, I'll let you introduce Abby.
Sure, well, yeah, well, I will.
You're on.
When I get up to the 1990s, I will definitely, so thank you. So,
You're on.
all right, thank
Josh,
you. Thanks.
and thank you for being here.
It's the right arrow.
Cool, thank you.
You want to use the mic?
I might, let me just put it. Yep.
Okay. I'll sing for a while.
That's okay. You don't want that. I think I'm good, thank you. So, everyone can hear me okay? All right, great. So, thank you for having me. Thank you, Rabbi Abby, for being here. She's here to fact check me afterwards. She'll come up to me and say, the years might be, but I'm here regardless, and I'm happy to present. Just to start off, just a quick lesson here. Your Hebrew words tonight. Shalom Chavarim. Say it back to me. Shalom. A little louder. Come on, like you mean it. Shalom Chavarim. So, shalom, as you might know, hello, goodbye, and peace. Chavarim is the plural word for friends, because I'd like to think that's who we're amongst tonight. And I'd like to start off, like many Jewish stories, with this three-word sentence here, in the beginning. And it actually, we're going to go a little bit before Hammonton history about the local Jewish community, and then how we got to Hammonton. And I'll try and keep it to like 15, 20 minutes. Hang in there. There we go. So, as Dave was saying earlier, this research is all part of a book that is officially published, The 70 Shuls of South Jersey. It's basically synagogue life and Yiddishkeit from the Pine Barrens to the Atlantic City Boardwalk. It's 70 different short stories, and they all intersect. There's 70 different Jewish communities / synagogues in the bottom half of our state, and it's been about a 4-year process to document all of them, and it's still a process in motion. So we're going to have 69 more after tonight. We can have sessions, but we're going to cover one of the 70s tonight. And I'm starting with the quote here. The synagogue is not merely a building, it is the beating heart of Jewish continuity, which is very true, and I think that will make even more sense as we go along. So the first slide here shows our subject tonight, Temple Beth of Hammonton. Went through a number of different identity changes in its many years of existence. It basically started off as a conservative synagogue in the 1930s, morphed into a reform, then Reconstructionist, and then unaffiliated, but leaned towards a more conservative style. It is, as you probably have passed it many times, located on Bellevue Avenue here in Hammonton. And although it says here 1937, its history actually goes back a couple years before. 1937 is when the building was actually constructed, the cornerstone was laid, but we're going to go back a little further in history, not quite 6,000 years, but maybe 100 or two. Okay, so this is obviously a map of the United States, and you can see two things missing here, Alaska and Hawaii as an example. There might be some other things missing, but this is a map that was used by the early settlers. It's a Yiddish map of the United States used by students in Woodbine, New Jersey. And it basically, it's kind of a segue into how this conversation's going to start, that the Jews of Hammonton did just show up. They were part of a chain of Jewish migration to the area that started, what I'll say is first, with pioneers, Jewish pioneers, who knew? And then refugees. A lot of people came after the Tsarist Russia, and in 1906 there were some major issues in Hungary that was happening. So pioneers, refugees, first generation of born American Jews, and then soon after that, Holocaust survivors. They all had a commonality in heritage, traditions, and for many, Yiddish. So again, I'm not going to go into, this isn't the whole thing, but these are about a dozen different Jewish communities that were established here in South Jersey between the 1882 and approximately 1900. Hammonton's not quite on there yet in the map, but I will bring your attention, there was a big cluster right here, which you might have heard of, known as the Alliance Colony. The Alliance Colony gave birth to Brotmanville, to Norma, as well as many others in the area. Another one that was very popular that sets the scene is Woodbine, okay, which in 1891 was established by the Baron de Hirsch Fund, and there's many others. Now, not all of these Jewish communities had synagogues, and the way it worked is, usually, not always, it would start off with a couple of local Jewish people. Then it would be a minyan, it's 10 people that come together for prayer. That's a quick definition. And then from a minyan, usually would form a congregation, more continuity, a little deeper level of services, and then sometimes they would get a big donor if they were lucky, and they would have a shul or a synagogue built. And sometimes they never evolved beyond the synagogue, and some of these communities never had a synagogue. They traveled to other areas to worship. But we're here to talk about Hammonton, and where else does the Hammonton Jewish story start off but alongside the development of the railroads that crisscrossed South Jersey, would prove to be very profitable. These were like tycoons, the Bill Gates and the Elons of the day, like them or not. They were millionaires of their time that owned these businesses. And Hammonton was geographically located approximately the midway point between the shore and Philadelphia, and a lot of traffic coming down the shore to Atlantic City. It was up and coming. It was a big deal in the 1920s, and lots of kosher restaurants, so a lot of Jews would make the trip. Along the way, out the train window, many of them might have seen Hammonton, and after probably in the 1920s and to the 1930s, it developed I'll say railroad-linked business district of a lot of Jewish merchants that ended up moving to the area. Some of them as an offshoot of it from Atlantic City, believe it or not, and Ventnor, which we'll get into in a little bit. By the early 1930s, enough Jews had lived in the town to form a minyan, and they didn't first meet they met at private residences, but their first place that they met at in 1934 was in this building here in 110 Bellevue Avenue in the Malinsky building, it was called. And basically they met there to work out the details about their future synagogue. They made a constitution, they launched a community-wide fundraising campaign, and their first rabbi, believe it or not, in the Malinsky building was from Ventnor, New Jersey. And he would make the trip every week to do services in Ventnor and then drive to Hammonton to conduct services simultaneously. And that connection with Ventnor continued, and I'll explain that when we get to it. But anyways, it first worshipped here in this building on the second floor, and the folding chairs are brought out, and Sam Kapnick is a major player in the formation. He was actually from Ventnor, helped with the Beth Judah Synagogue, moved to Hammonton, and then had the blueprint in his mind. How do you start up a synagogue? I just did it in Ventnor. And he was one of the major people that helped move this forward. Before the construction of the synagogue, a women's group, a sisterhood formed. And basically, the sisterhood was oftentimes in these early synagogue research, I find, the catalyst behind the fundraising. The men would do the praying and the planning, and the women would actually take the action and get it done. Which, it sometimes transfers in today's world, but it was true. This was the way not only Beth El Hammonton, but many other synagogues worked. The women were behind the scenes, and a lot of the Atlantic City, specifically synagogues, doing these gala affairs and dinners and dances in the kosher hotels of Atlantic City. It was a big tradition and a big moneymaker. So what we're looking at here is February of 1937. The ground was broken at Temple Beth Hammonton at its present location, 642 Bellevue Avenue. The cornerstone was laid in April 37, and it was officially dedicated in June 37. Now, this is where, as a historian, I'm constantly think I have the answer, and I'm like, no, that was just the cornerstone. No, that was the ribbon cutting. No, that was the dedication. So when these synagogues actually opened is definitely a gray area. It depends where you want the starting point to be. But it officially happened in 1937, and by January 1940, they actually burned their mortgage. Now, this was a big deal for many reasons. One, for a synagogue to burn its mortgage only 3 or 4 years after its inception is amazing. And two, this was coming off of the Great Depression, and funds from donors were probably not very easy to come by. And regardless of when it happened, it's an impressive view. And oftentimes, much like the groundbreaking or the cornerstone, these would be what I'll say is high-profile events in the history of the synagogue, where it would make the news and get an article, maybe even a picture if you're lucky. So this is, to the best of my knowledge, the first picture of Bethel Hammonton taken on the right. It's a little smaller version. It didn't quite have the extension in the basement area out back, but we'll get to that later. Anyways, moving forward, as I mentioned, the progression of the Jewish history in South Jersey there's a pattern to it. Pioneer, refugee, first generation, and survivor. And in 1941, Rabbi Max Katz, he was a Holocaust survivor from Nuremberg, Germany. He was hired as Bethel's second full-time rabbi. His family fled Nazi Germany to Newfoundland, Canada. And then he relocated from Germany to Canada to Hammonton. And guess what he did? He raised chickens, of course. What else was he going to do? He spoke perfect Yiddish, and the chickens didn't care what language you spoke to them. And it was a revenue source that a lot of Jews took upon themselves as a job after the war, because they could be their own boss. They could keep the Shabbat, they could keep the Sabbath, feed the chickens a little extra, and also it's okay to take care of your animals and make sure they're alive and well during Shabbat. But still, it was basically these self-run businesses, and this rabbi was one of, I guess, the early ones in Hammonton. Most of the people that did this, Vineland, as well as Dorothy, McKee City, and there's one or two others, Egg Harbor City has a bunch. There's a lot of these amazing stories that come out of these survivors come poultry farmers. A lot of them left Germany as doctors, lawyers, and basically their skills were useless in this new world, and they had to adapt and adjust. So following Rabbi Katz, he moved along in 1943, and basically from that point, Bethel hired rabbis on a per diem basis, usually to officiate the high holiday services. And basically the members themselves were able to conduct a lot of the services. You can see here the roof, placard, as well as the cornerstone there. And because, as I was saying, the lack of a long-term leadership, and a rabbi consistently, as part of the synagogue at this time in the 40s and 50s, they were kind of flopping around as far as their affiliation, and they went from conservative to a more reformed style of prayer. Again, these are vague categories. They weren't like officially reformed, but they leaned in a reformed style, meaning men and women sat together, more repetitive prayers in English rather than Hebrew, kind of meeting a lot of the congregants where they're at. So the interior view, if you haven't seen it before, it is stunning. And Bethel, during this period, again, their women's leadership was thriving, and was a testament to their progressive values, how much they let women be part of the synagogue and part of the leadership and lead services. And what they did was, too, they had regular Thanksgiving Day services, and they celebrated not only with the local Jewish population, and they always treasured their proud place within the larger American dream, uniting faith and patriotism. Oftentimes, when I look at old sermon topics, around January, it's all about the presidents. It's, the Lincoln and the Jews, Washington and the Jews. And they were really, not just in Hammonton, but at this period in time, a lot of Jews were very looking forward to becoming more Americanized and more a part of the mainstream. A lot of scouting was a big transition for a lot of people, a lot of young people into Americanization. Anyways, moving along here. So in 1955, moving along, the board selected Rabbi Arthur Sofer to lead Bethel. He followed Rabbi Joseph Hurwitz in 1958. And in the 1960s brought a rise in a lot more secular activities. And it transformed the synagogue, less of a place of prayer and more of a vibrant hub of life for Jews and non-Jews. They had dances, performances, social activities. And by the late 1960s, and I love their doors, by the way, their Jewish population seemed to decline significantly. They were all moving to the shore. Let's face it, we talked about it earlier. A younger generations moved away to start families in the surrounding suburbs and cities, and a demographic trend across many South Jersey communities was happening. Farmers were selling their land, Jewish-owned businesses closed, and as a result, Beth El's remaining members were primarily elderly couples that could no longer financially sustain a synagogue, and they were actually prepared to close its doors, no pun intended, in the early 1970s. And however, with the opening of Kessler Hospital, as many of you might remember, in the mid-1970s, new Jewish families moved to Hammonton. They revitalized Beth El's membership to some extent, and a new congregation. Many of these new people were in mixed marriages, and the style of prayer in Beth El was not orthodox. They were very acceptive of mixed marriage families and children, and it basically kind of helped give a rebirth to this synagogue. Traditions were revived, and Cantor Goldhirsch of Philadelphia was hired to teach B'nai Mitzvah lessons for boys and girls. This is by the way, sorry. Oh, go back. There we go. It was extended at some point, and in the where it wasn't always this long. The basement was made much larger, and we'll talk about how that came into play later on. So, anyways, the windows here. In the early 1980s, Beth El had grown to about 20 families. Rabbi Lauren Levy led the congregation and reestablished the once popular sisterhood. She was followed by Rabbi Goldie Milgram, also known as Gail Brightman, to help guide the congregation. Originally, Gail was brought on to oversee the synagogue's closure, but instead, she kind of helped the sisterhood decide to keep it open. And under her leadership, Beth El Hebrew School was restarted, and local parents stepped up to serve as teachers. We could see some of the many stained glass windows here. On the left, over here, or on my left, or your left, is the eternal light, that usually hangs over the Holy Ark. On the right, you'll see two Lions of Judah that are kind of gripping and holding the Ten Commandments, written in Hebrew, an abbreviated version with a crown on top. That's the crown of Torah. Okay, so these are just some of the stunning, beautiful artwork and that were present inside the building. The Bima, okay. So in the 1990s, a second demographic shift further reduced the number of affiliated Jews. It's been an up and down wave here. And Jewish families, they chose to settle, instead of in Hammonton, in local other nearby communities like Cherry Hill. And a dedicated synagogue board worked tirelessly to sustain the congregation through fundraisers, community yard sales, all kinds of things. And some of the amazing things during this time that a lot of the synagogues during the struggling period would rent themselves out to be like, Weight Watchers now at this synagogue, or quit smoking by hypnosis now meeting at this. Or these really unique ways that synagogues had to make money in the 70s and 80s and 90s when things were changing around them. You had to adapt. Moving forward in the 2000s, the congregation actually initially set their tuition, their membership fees really low. And in the 2000s, they chose to forego annual membership fees, and instead envelopes were handed out during services, Yom Kippur, the high holidays. And they still continue to bring in 50 congregants during the holidays. And on Friday night services were less attended. They were held once a month. And the closely knit congregation, no one ever felt lost in the crowd. The small size of the group made services deeply personal and required active participation from all its members. There was no place to hide in this crowd. It kept with Jewish tradition of community responsibility, and the Beth El congregants embraced their role in sustaining the shul. One more thing here. Okay, this is more recent. This is the basement scene, and I'll start here by saying and I hope I get everything right, Abby, from 2003 to 2006, Rabbi Abby Michaleski served as the cantorial soloist and led events and educational programs. And in 2006, she became the congregation's spiritual leader while attending rabbinical school. There's more to it, but hang in there. This, I think, was amazing just because it's an amazing utilization of space. I mean, how many tables and chairs can you fit into this little room? I was impressed. I found this on the Facebook, and I was like, hats off, nice job to make the most of a small space. Someone that has done that often. In 2012, with Rabbi Abby in charge, the congregation celebrated its 75th anniversary in the Eagle Theater in Hammonton. And most of Bethel's remaining members, they moved away, but they came back for the celebration from Indian Mills, Southampton, Cherry Hill. Shortly after the Simcha, which is a Hebrew word for celebration, the synagogue suffered a major flood, unfortunately. And the cost of repairs were in close to $70,000. Discussions about closing the building were brought up, they were decided instead to raise the money through fundraising. And during the restoration, a local church generously offered space for Bethel to continue its programming. I'm not sure which one, I'm sorry. It's not in my notes, I don't want to say it. But basically, it created intimate Shabbat services also in people's homes as the community kind of waited for the synagogue to be repaired. Almost done. Okay, so in 2018, Rabbi Abby Michaleski was hired as the rabbi of Beth Israel in Vineland. Rabbi Michaleski was hired as the rabbi of Beth Israel in Vineland in 2021, and she continued to serve as a helper, as a rabbi of Bethel. But during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, basically everything was closing down, and Temple Bethel suspended its Hebrew school and entered a period of dormancy until ultimately they had to close it in 2021. In 2022, there was a community gathering for a heartfelt closing led by Rabbi Abby. And upon its closure, its Torahs were donated to a couple homes, one to the Or Zarua, a Philadelphia synagogue, and another to the Abu Daya Jewish congregation, and a third, a 200-year-old Kabbalistic-style Torah from southern Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic, is placed in the Holy Ark and kept at Beth Israel. Now, the sales from the proceeds of the building, this is always nice to hear. They included student scholarships for Hammonton High School students, contribution to the Jewish Federation, the Ezra Uganda Fund, that supports the Abuduya Jewish congregation in Uganda, and a student scholarship fund at Stockton University's Holocaust and Genocide program. Who knows, I might have gotten it. Temple Bethel may now live on only in name, but it continues to hold a special place in the hearts of Rabbi Abby and the extended Hammonton community. Today, as the synagogue was sold, throughout its 85-year-old history, it attracted Jews on the fringe, not just denominationally and geographically as well. The synagogue stood as one of the farthest Jewish outposts in the Atlantic County, where Jews found their spiritual home amongst the world-famous blueberry farms of Hammonton, New Jersey. So with that, I will say thank you for your attention, and I have to give a plug. This is, again, part of a book that is now at the publisher, and I'd be happy to come back and talk. I do a talk on the lost shuls of the Pine Barrens, which I think would be fun here. So anyways, have me back. I'd be happy to talk, and thank you for your attention. Thank you, wherever Rabbi Abby is, for inspiring this story, or being part of the last 25% of it approximately. And she'll fact check me later, and she's always so gracious about it, so thank you. Thank you guys for listening.
Very good, very good.
Their closing Hebrew word is Todah Rabbah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for teaching.
No problem, my pleasure.
The next time we meet, there'll be a test on the Hebrew. So I hope you wrote it down phonetically. That was wonderful. Thank you, Josh.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And we have some things. Apparently, I only have one now. I think, Josh, you may have taken some of my material.
Uh-oh.
No, I think something fell on the floor though.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, there is something.
Oh,
that- I've fallen and I can't get up. Well, we want to, Madam President, Eileen, do you want to close up? I'm doing it? Okay. Do we have any questions from the three speakers tonight, or for the three speakers tonight? That means it's late. So, what we want to do, though, is present each. Oh, we have a question, Abby.
It's not a question, actually, can I say something?
Yeah, you want to come up here? You outrank me.
No, I won't. I just, thank you, Josh, that was really wonderful. It is an important part of the history that I really want to say. From what I've heard, the understanding is when they decided to build the building and do a fundraiser, the Christian community provided a majority of those funds. Wow. And think of the year that it was 34 was when the fundraiser, I see shaking heads, you guys probably know more of this history than I do. 34 it started and the first brick was laid in 37. And really the churches made it happen. And it was a difficult time in our country, in our world, and it's an amazing part of the story and what can happen when we come together. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was very touching. The Historical Society of Hammonton, unless there are other questions or comments. Bill?
One quick comment to our Methodist brethren. So the Bills of America Society is sponsoring for July 4th, 2026 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that all bells will be rung simultaneously throughout the country. And so we have one bell in Hammonton that can be and it's the Methodist Church, their bell. 250th anniversary of our birth.
Thank you, Bill. That's Bill Parkhurst. Well, I'm very grateful to our three speakers. Thank you very much. The Historical Society of Hammonton would like to present each speaker this honorary family membership to the Historical Society of Hammonton. I'll bring it to you. And we thank you for your participation, the energy you put into your presentations, and the devotion you do in your work, whether it's clergy, historian, the other historian for the St. Joseph's community. And thank you all for being here tonight. We have some treats back there, if you like, and thank you for staying. I hope you had a good evening.
Mention the display.
Yeah, once again, you gotta get to the museum, but there's also a display over here. It got to. Pastor, thank you very much.